He was just 2 years old when he lost his father. She was an 8-year-old girl who had to grow up far too fast. For almost 2 decades, the world has watched the Irwin children carry a legacy that could have crushed anyone. But behind the smiles, behind the conservation work, and behind the cameras, a private storm was brewing. What really happened when Robert Irwin broke down in tears on live television? And why did it force his mother, Terri, and sister, Bindi, to confront a grief they thought they had buried long ago? 22 years of silence. 22 years of smiling for the cameras, while a wound festered in the dark. When Robert Irwin stepped onto the Dancing with the Stars stage, no one expected to see the cheerful wildlife warrior break down. But that night, the boy who grew up without his father finally allowed the world to see what he had been carrying since he was just 2 years old. And it changed everything. The moment happened during the 5th week of a competition. Robert and his dance partner Whitney Carson performed a contemporary routine to Phil Collins' song You'll Be in My Heart. It was dedication night, and everyone assumed Robert would honor his famous father. But he chose someone else, his mother, Terri. In the rehearsal footage that aired before the performance, Robert opened a door that had been locked for years. I was 2 when I lost Dad, and as I got older, I started to realize just how hard it must be for her, he said, his voice cracking. I've never really been able to capture the feeling of gratitude that I feel for her. Then the dam broke. Tears streamed down his face. He couldn't stop them. For a young man who had spent his entire public life radiating positivity and enthusiasm, this was something completely different. This was raw. This was real. I struggled a lot with losing my dad. A lot, he admitted through his tears. And she always made sure my dad was present in our lives. I want her to know how proud my dad would be of her. The performance itself was stunning. Robert danced with controlled emotion. Carson moved gracefully beside him. And then, in the final moments, she stepped off the stage. Terri Irwin walked on and finished the dance with her son. When the music stopped, Robert completely broke down. He pulled his mother into a hug that seemed to say everything words could not. The judges gave them a season-high score of 35 out of 40. But the numbers didn't matter. What mattered was what Robert had finally released. After the show, Terri defended her son, saying she was proud of him. But something had shifted. The family's carefully maintained public composure had cracked. The grief they had carried privately was now on full display. However, that emotional moment was only the beginning. Behind closed doors, another Irwin was fighting a battle far more painful than anyone knew. For 10 years, she smiled for the world while her body waged war against her. For 10 years, she canceled plans, made excuses, and suffered in silence. When Bindi Irwin finally spoke up about her health, nobody realized how close she had come to breaking point. But what she was hiding would shock even her closest fans. While Robert was pouring his heart out on the dance floor, his sister was fighting a battle that had been slowly destroying her for over a decade. Endometriosis is a disease where tissue similar to the lining of the uterus grows outside it, causing agonizing pain. But for Bindi, the nightmare went far beyond the diagnosis. She later revealed that only 4 people knew how sick she really was: her husband Chandler, her mother Terri, and her brother Robert. Behind closed doors, she was struggling to do anything and everything. It meant canceling plans constantly. People must have thought she was flaky or unreliable, but the truth was far more brutal. She would try to get out of bed and immediately be sick. The pain was constant. The fatigue was overwhelming. I struggled with insurmountable fatigue, pain, and nausea, she would later write. Trying to remain a positive person and hide the pain has been a very long road. What makes Bindi's story so heartbreaking is the medical gaslighting she endured. She underwent every scan you could imagine: CT scans, MRIs, ultrasounds, blood tests. She was even tested for every tropical disease. Yet doctors told her there was nothing wrong. One doctor told her it was simply something you deal with as a woman. She gave up entirely, trying to function through the pain. I was so scared to share my story. I had never talked about being unwell because I thought it was all in my head, Bindi admitted. After a dozen doctors tell you you're crazy, you start to believe them. For 10 years, Robert watched his sister suffer. For 10 years, Terri watched her daughter collapse on the floor in agony and be told it was normal. The family that had survived Steve's death was now watching another Irwin fade away in plain sight. Then came the turning point that would change everything. 51 lesions, a chocolate cyst, a ruptured appendix, a hernia from childbirth that was slowly tearing apart. When Bindi Irwin finally went under the knife, doctors found a battlefield inside her body. But what happened next would force the entire Irwin family to confront something they had been avoiding for years. The reckoning had arrived. The day everything changed started like any other. Bindi was supposed to be in Las Vegas for the annual Steve Irwin Gala, the family's most important event of the year. She had packed her bags. She had put on a brave face. But deep inside, something was wrong. Her appendix had ruptured. "I'm just going to tough it out," she told her family. But the pain was unbearable. She was rushed into emergency surgery. Missing the gala was painful enough. But what doctors found inside her body was devastating. They discovered 14 more endometriosis lesions that had been hiding. They repaired a large hernia that had been slowly unzipping since she gave birth to her daughter Grace. This was not just a routine surgery. This was a revelation. Terri Irwin stayed by her daughter's bedside through it all. She missed the gala entirely. Robert had to stand alone at the event, explaining to reporters why his mother and sister weren't there. "She's going to be okay, but surgery, out of all the things we were ready for, that was not one of them," Robert told people. And that's when the truth began to spill out. Bindi realized she couldn't hide anymore. For years, only 4 people knew how sick she really was: her husband Chandler, her mother Terri, and her brother Robert. Everyone else thought she was just becoming flaky. "I would bow out of commitment after commitment at the last minute because I was in so much pain," she later admitted. People asked when she was having another child, completely unaware that her body had been at war with itself for a decade. The reckoning was also deeply personal for Bindi's own identity. "As a teenager and young woman, I felt weak and deeply insecure. I was trapped in my own body." For years, she had been told her pain was just part of being a woman. Medical gaslighting had convinced her she was crazy. But now, the truth was out, and the family had to face it together. She had survived the surgeries. She had survived the pain. But what Bindi Irwin didn't know was that the hardest battle was yet to come. When she finally opened up to the world, she feared she would be judged. Instead, something extraordinary happened. Thousands of women reached out. But with the revelation came an unexpected price. The private family was now completely exposed. And the stakes had never been higher. When Bindi finally spoke publicly about her endometriosis battle, she revealed the full extent of what had been removed from her body. Over 2 surgeries, doctors had taken out 51 endometriosis lesions, a chocolate cyst that had been adhering her ovary to her side, her ruptured appendix, and a hernia from childbirth that was slowly unzipping. The numbers were staggering. She wrote on Instagram, 13 years of fighting for answers. 51 endometriosis lesions, a chocolate cyst, and my appendix were all removed across 2 surgeries. My hernia from giving birth that was unzipping was taken care of. I can finally say that I'm feeling better, genuinely healing. But her words carried more weight than just medical details. For the first time, Bindi admitted to the shame she had carried for years. "I felt utterly ashamed as a teenager and young adult being told that my pain was just part of being a woman. I felt lesser. I felt hurt. I felt weak. That is not okay." Now the stakes were clear. Bindi wasn't just fighting for her own health anymore. She was fighting for every woman who had been dismissed, ignored, and gaslit by the medical system. She said, "We need to take away the stigma of talking about women's health. It's time to have open discussions and make change on a global scale." At the same time, Robert's emotional confession on Dancing with the Stars had thrown the family's private grief into the spotlight. He had cried on national television. He had broken down in his mother's arms. Now, millions of people had seen the pain behind the smile. "The legacy that my mom and dad created is incredible," Robert later said. "They were just the ultimate team, and they created something that I and my sister, we get to continue, and in a message that is so important. But what Robert revealed next showed just how high the stakes truly were. He was just 2 years old. His memories of his father were blurry, distant, fading. But then something extraordinary happened. Robert Irwin found a gift his father had left him. A message recorded years before that would break him down and rebuild him all over again. And when he finally heard what Steve Irwin had to say, the tears started flowing all over again. While Robert was breaking down on the dance floor and Bindi was fighting for her health, a different kind of healing was taking place. Robert had gone on the Vile Files podcast to talk about his grief. He opened up about something he had never shared before. His memories of his father are blurry, very, very distant. For years, he had longed to feel connected to the man everyone called the Crocodile Hunter. But then, something changed. Robert found old footage of himself as a 2-year-old playing with his father. He had never seen it before. And in that moment, a wave of emotion hit him. It was like a door opening inside his mind. Suddenly, the memories came flooding back. He could feel his father's presence again. It's happened to me a handful of times in my life, where I will watch footage that I haven't seen before of me as a 2-year-old kid with him, and all of a sudden it's like this wave. It's like I just get hit with something and all of a sudden, it's like boom, I remember that. But the greatest gift came when he watched one of Steve's old interviews. In it, Steve spoke directly about his mission. He didn't just want to save animals. He wanted to leave something for his children. My whole mission is to create a legacy that my kids can continue, Steve said. Robert heard those words, and he lost it. His father had been looking through the camera, talking directly to him. Steve Irwin knew he wouldn't always be there. So he built something that his children could carry forward. He gave them a purpose, a mission, a reason to get up every morning. So, for me watching that, it's like he gave me this gift. It's there, it's material, it's in writing. I'm watching him looking through the camera and telling me I'm not always going to be here, but I'm creating something that you can continue. And that's what I want you to do. For Robert, that wasn't just a memory. It was a moment of healing. He finally understood why he and Bindi had to keep going. This was never just a job. It was the final message from a father who loved them more than anything. The cameras were rolling. The world was watching. And then, Terri Irwin said the words she had kept locked inside for 2 decades. What she revealed about her husband's final moments would leave her children shattered and the entire world in tears. The quiet strength of the Irwin matriarch had finally cracked. And what came out was the most powerful confession of all. For 20 years, Terri Irwin had been the rock. She had raised 2 children alone. She had built a global conservation empire. She had smiled through every interview and appeared at every event. But in a rare, unguarded moment on the project, the grief that she had carefully contained finally spilled over. "We all miss him every day," Terri said, her voice trembling. "But I go back to the last thing he said to me. Terri, I'm not going to make it." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Robert and Bindi, sitting beside their mother, were visibly shaken. For years, they had only known the public version of their father's death. A freak accident, a stingray, a tragedy that happened in an instant. But Terri had been carrying the final conversation with her husband for 20 years. Steve Irwin died on September 4th, 2006, while filming a documentary in Bat Reef, Queensland. He was diving in chest-deep water when a stingray's barb pierced his heart. The injury was catastrophic. But in those final moments, as blood filled his chest and his life slipped away, Steve knew. He had time to say goodbye. "The last thing he said to me was, 'Terri, I'm not going to make it,'" she recounted. "And I said, 'I'm right here.' And he said, 'I know.'" It was the most intimate moment of the entire tragedy. A husband and wife facing the end together. Steve knew he was dying, and his last words to his wife were not filled with fear or panic. They were filled with acceptance. Robert, who had been listening to his mother recount the moment for the first time publicly, was overwhelmed. He had heard the story privately, but hearing his mother speak those words on television was something else entirely. "I remember hearing that when I was a kid," Robert said later. "And I just remember thinking, that's the bravest thing I've ever heard." For Bindi, It was a reminder of the immense weight her mother had carried alone. Terri had not just lost her husband. She had held his hand as he took his final breath. She had raised 2 children while carrying the memory of his final words. And she had never, until that moment, shared them with the world. But the revelation didn't end there. As Terri wiped away her tears, she looked at her children and said something that changed everything. The grief was real. The pain was raw. But out of the ashes of tragedy, something beautiful had emerged. When Terri Irwin looked at her children after revealing her husband's final words, she saw something she had never seen before. She saw not just survivors. She saw warriors. And in that moment, the Irwin family finally found the peace they had been searching for. Terri Irwin had spent 20 years being the strong one. She had raised Robert and Bindi with the same passion her husband had shown the world. She had kept Australia Zoo running. She had continued Steve's conservation work. But she had also kept a secret. The weight of Steve's final words had been hers alone to carry. But on that day, when she finally spoke them aloud, something shifted. The burden she had been carrying for 2 decades began to lift. And when she looked at her children, she realized they were no longer the grieving little boy and girl she had held in her arms at the funeral. They were grown. They were strong. And they were carrying the legacy forward. Dad always used to say, "We are the guardians of the wild," Bindi later reflected. And when you have a family that's so deeply connected to nature and to animals, you realize that grief is just another part of love. The love doesn't go away. It just changes shape. Robert echoed his sister's sentiments. So many people think that because we smile and we love what we do, that we've somehow moved on or that we're over it, he said. But that's not true. We carry Dad with us every single day. We just choose to focus on the good he brought to the world instead of a sadness of losing him. The resolution wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a single moment of sudden clarity. It was the slow realization that grief and joy could coexist, that tears and laughter could share the same space, that the Irwin family could honor Steve by continuing his work, by living their lives with purpose, and by never forgetting the man who had started it all. For Robert, the tears he shed on Dancing with the Stars were not a sign of weakness. They were a sign of healing. For Bindi, the surgeries and the pain were not the end of her story. They were the beginning of a new chapter. For Terri, finally speaking her husband's final words was not a moment of sorrow. It was a moment of release. The Irwin family had faced the unthinkable, and they had survived. The tears have dried. The surgeries are over. The confessions have been made. But the Irwin family story is far from finished. As Robert and Bindi look toward the future, they carry more than just their father's name. They carry his mission, his heart, and his unbreakable spirit. And now, a new generation is ready to carry the torch. The Irwin legacy is one of the most remarkable in modern history. It began with a man who wrestled crocodiles and spoke to millions about the importance of conservation. It continued through a woman who refused to let grief define her family. And now, it rests on the shoulders of 2 children who have proven they are more than capable of carrying it forward. Bindi, now a mother herself, has found a new purpose in raising her daughter, Grace. She has spoken about how becoming a parent has deepened her understanding of her own parents. "I finally understand what Mom went through," she said. "Being a mother is the most incredible thing in the world. And I know Dad would be so proud of the family we're building." She has also become a powerful advocate for women's health. Her decision to speak publicly about endometriosis has inspired thousands of women to seek help and to stop suffering in silence. She has used her platform to push for better medical education and more research into a disease that affects 1 in 10 women worldwide. Robert, meanwhile, has stepped into his father's shoes in ways no one could have predicted. He has become a beloved television personality, a passionate conservationist, and a voice for the next generation. But more importantly, he has learned to embrace his grief rather than hide from it. His emotional confessions on national television have shown millions that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to cry, and that true strength comes from facing your pain head on. "I want people to know that it's okay to feel," Robert said. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to miss someone. But it's also okay to be happy and to keep living. That's what Dad would have wanted. As for Terri, she has found peace in watching her children thrive. She has stepped back from the spotlight in recent years, allowing Robert and Bindi to take center stage. But she remains the heart of the Irwin family, the quiet strength that holds everything together. The Australia Zoo continues to grow. The conservation work continues to expand. And the Irwin name remains synonymous with wildlife protection, family values, and unbreakable resilience. 20 years ago, a family lost everything. 20 years ago, a little boy and a little girl said goodbye to their father far too soon. But today, that same family stands stronger than ever. The tears have become symbols of love. The pain has become fuel for purpose. And the legacy of Steve Irwin lives on, not just in Australia Zoo, but in the hearts of two children who refused to let his light go out. The Irwin family's journey is a testament to the human spirit. It is a story of loss, of pain, of unimaginable grief. But it is also a story of hope, of resilience, and of love that refuses to die. Terri, Robert, and Bindi have shown the world that it is possible to survive the worst and still find joy. That it is possible to cry and still smile. That it is possible to carry the weight of the past and still run toward the future. Robert's tears on Dancing with the Stars were not a moment of weakness. They were a moment of liberation. The boy who had grown up without his father finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of his loss. And in doing so, he discovered that grief is not something to be hidden. It is something to be shared. Bindi's decision to speak publicly about her endometriosis battle was not just about her own health. It was about every woman who has been dismissed, ignored, and told that her pain was all in her head. By sharing her story, she gave voice to millions of women who had been suffering in silence. She turned her pain into purpose. And Terri's confession about Steve's final words was not just a moment of sorrow. It was a moment of healing. For 20 years, she had carried that burden alone. By finally sharing it with the world, she released a weight that had been pressing down on her heart for 2 decades. Together, the Irwin family has faced the unthinkable and emerged stronger. They have proven that love is stronger than death, that legacy is more powerful than loss, and that the bond between a parent and a child can never be broken, not even by tragedy. The Irwin family story teaches us that it is okay to hurt. It is okay to cry. It is okay to fall apart sometimes. But it is never okay to give up, because the people we love live on through us. Their spirit lives on in our actions. Their love lives on in our hearts. And their legacy lives on in the lives we choose to lead. As the sun sets over Australia Zoo, as the crocodiles bask in the warmth of the day, as the birds sing their evening songs, one thing remains clear. Steve Irwin is gone, but he is not forgotten. His smile is on his son's face. His passion is in his daughter's heart, and his love is in his wife's soul. The Irwin family has turned tragedy into triumph, and in doing so, they have inspired millions. As Bindi, Robert, and Terri move forward into the future, they want you to know one thing. No matter what you are going through, no matter how dark the night may seem, the sun will rise again. The pain will fade. The love will remain. If this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments below. What part of the Irwin family's journey resonated with you the most? And if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories of resilience, courage, and the unbreakable human spirit.